All right. Hey, folks, it's Faz here from Faz Lifts. Today, I'm going to be giving you my perspective on a topic that Geoffrey Verity Schofield discussed a couple of weeks ago on his YouTube. So first of all, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have a question for me, pop it down in the description, and the best ones I will get around to making into videos. All right. So let's start with just having a bit of an introduction into Geoffrey and see what he said. All right, so Geoffrey goes on to discuss both of those channels and how some of the videos they do may potentially contribute to body dysmorphia of the viewers. And he goes down to do a very detailed breakdown into some of the negative effects of being too lean. So what I wanted to discuss was just to touch on some of his points and give my perspective of those points to you guys. Around about 2.5 years ago, I got into stage shape for a men's physique show here over in the UK. And prior to that, I've competed in powerlifting and strongman. And I wanted to sort of try something new. So I went with bodybuilding. As I'm getting a little bit older now, I'm going to be hitting the big 40 this year in a couple of weeks, actually. So I wanted to try bodybuilding in my hand at it. And it was great for a challenge, but there were ups and downs in the process of getting very lean. So just to cover some of the points that Jeff was talking about. Firstly, you are highly restricted when it comes to food choices. Now, what I personally found, I found that cravings came first. So my cravings for certain foods, or as the diet got more and more restrictive, as I was choosing options more for satiety rather than for taste, I found that the cravings hit first. And for me, it was little things like crisps, or what you guys in America might call potato chips. That was the first thing that I really missed. Then after that was things like chocolate. And then a very English thing, an all English breakfast. Those are the kind of things I craved initially. Now, towards the tail end of the diet, when I got to my absolute leanest, it was far more non-specific. I just wanted to eat. And that's really what it was. There was no particular craving that was standing out. They were all just there, but I just wanted to eat more of what I actually had. So the portions just weren't big enough. I could eat a meal and be done. Like, you know what, I could eat that again. I can't wait till my next meal. And that goes on to my second point. During those later stages, particularly the last 4 weeks for me, it was, I was never really full. Like, I couldn't get full. There was no meal which was satisfying. I was essentially a bottomless pit. And if I didn't actively fight against it, then I would eat more than I intended to that day. Now, that's a very stressful experience to have. I encourage people a lot on my channel not to white knuckle a diet. Like, your diet shouldn't be set up in a way which you're just willpowering your way through. But this is the thing, when it comes to getting that lean and staying that lean, you kind of have to. There is no amount of sensible food choices that is going to keep you shredded. You're never really going to be full. Nothing is ever really going to get you to the point where it's like, okay, I feel satisfied, unless you're just way overeating on your calories on that day. So sticking to the plan just isn't satisfying, and you literally have to white knuckle it. So that in itself is a major source of stress. Next point is, you're never really energetic. So I can recall, and many of the competitors who are watching this will probably relate to this, in the mornings, I had the most energy, and that's generally when I would do my cardio. I do wonder if morning fasted cardio is one of those things which is related to that, actually. But I did my cardio in the morning fasted. Wasn't for any magical reason. It was for the practical reason that was the only time of the day that I actually had a decent amount of energy, probably because I had just been sleeping for however many hours. So yeah, I was never really energetic. So I did most of my cardio and my training in the morning, because once it hit about midday, that's it. I was dragging my feet through the mud the rest of the day. I was just tired. I can specifically recall going into the gym about 4 weeks out, and I remember asking the gym owner, who was a fairly seasoned bodybuilder, and he had coached a lot of people. He knew Dorian Yates back in the day. He trained with him, and et cetera, et cetera. Where I'm from, I'm about an hour away from Dorian's original temple gym. So all the guys sort of hung around in the same circles back in the day. But anyway, I said to him, look, Mick, I feel exhausted. And he's like, yeah, I know. And he said, I wouldn't expect anything less at this stage. And he said, If you were feeling better at this stage, you were feeling energetic, then you wouldn't be ready. And it was just that simple. There was nothing really you could do to mitigate that. So you're never really energetic. Now, as a tag along to that, you have a reduced to almost non-existent libido. That's certainly what I experienced. So I just didn't have a sex drive at that stage. Probably, I think I remember there was a refeed one weekend, and after that I felt a little bit fruity, but that's about it. Sex drive was pretty much zilch, sadly, for the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks. Also, I was a lot weaker in the gym. At this point, because I had gotten that lean, I pretty much gave up most barbell lifts, just because there wasn't much padding there. So I feared injury. So I wasn't doing any squats, any bench presses, and I was mostly sticking to machine exercises. And even in those machine exercises, I was just a lot weaker. Geoffrey touched on this in his video as well. Strength in the gym massively declines. And it was the same for me. I was pretty much just holding on. As I say, with a lot of this stuff, you're white knuckling it right the way to the finishing line. Strength is going down. You're just trying to keep a hold of it as much as possible. Energy levels are plummeting. Hunger is rising. You're just trying to make it to the finishing line. Next, I was far less able to cope with stress. In fact, I remember one occasion particularly. It was one occasion where it was particularly bad, and I was stuck in traffic. And I remember being stuck in traffic, just thinking to myself, I can't deal with this. I was out driving to meet a friend for a drink, and I recall just thinking to myself, I can't deal with this. I can't cope with this. That was something like 3 weeks out. It was heavy, busy traffic. Traffic wasn't moving, and I just turned around and went home. And I texted my friend. I said, look, I'm not going to be able to meet up. I just can't do it. So you're far less able to cope with stress. Now, all of those things combined, so being really hungry, being craving different foods, never really being full, never really being energetic, having absolutely zilch libido, feeling weaker in the gym, feeling horrendously far less able to cope with stress, and finally just being in a really bad mood all around. All of those things contribute to the degrading of your mood in general. I think one last thing I could say is probably sleep is affected. Mine certainly was. I was hardly getting any sleep. I was massively reliant on things like melatonin. And even then, I was getting very little sleep, mostly because my body was just waking up hungry. So all of these things make for a very difficult life, a very difficult day. It's not the type of thing you can actually sustain. Hopefully that's given you guys a bit of an idea. Now, I wanted to end by saying, I wanted to talk about influencers who preach sustainability, but don't actually show that in their images and in their body of work. I had Menno Henselman on the podcast a while back, and he was discussing some influencers that he knows who portray this idea that their level of leanness, being absolutely shredded year round, is actually sustainable. But behind the scenes, what they do to maintain that condition is horrific. Like, it'll just be massive binges followed by weeks and weeks of over restriction, and that cycle will just play itself out over and over, because they have to sustain this lifestyle year in, year out, because they have this false impression that the public want to see them as shredded year round. Now, I know somebody like that. I used to know somebody like that years ago, and he was a very intelligent person, and he was actually he had a very big account on Instagram, not on YouTube, but he couldn't see the flaw in his logic. He preached sustainability, but he didn't live a sustainable lifestyle, and in the end, he burnt himself out completely and has pretty much stopped all social media interactions simply because he never understood the flaw in his logic. He preached sustainability. He talked about sustainability. He coached people to be sustainable. But he could never understand the flaw in his logic because he presented himself with this unsustainable lifestyle. And you couldn't even argue it was sustainable for him, because in the end, he completely burnt out. And I remember prior to that, he was getting burnt out on these things. And I think that's far more common than people realize. It's far more common that people burn themselves out on social media because they have this false impression that they have to be lean and shredded all year round because that's what the audience expects. But what they're actually doing is they're contributing to that. And part of what I enjoyed about Geoffrey's video is this idea that he's actually presenting to people, look, that's not normal. It's not natural. And odds are, if you're that lean year round, you probably feel horrendous, like I've outlined I felt in the lead up to my show. And so it's not something that you should be aiming for year round. It's certainly not something that's sustainable. And I would say for you guys listening, my audience, I would say it's cool to do. Like, I personally really enjoy the challenge. I've competed in something since I was 18, whether that's powerlifting, strongman, or bodybuilding. And I was in 40 in a couple of weeks. So I've competed in something for well over 2 decades. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the mastery. But so the process of getting down to that level of body fat certainly teaches you a lot about yourself. So it's a wonderful, beautiful process. It can be. But trying to sustain that year round, not possible, not healthy, and not something that I would recommend. So in conclusion, I very much enjoyed Geoffrey's video. I would highly recommend checking out his channel. I'll link the video in the description below. You can find it from a YouTube search. So I'll call it there. And I will just say, if you've made it this far, do consider subscribing. And don't try and maintain leanness year round. Don't even have that as a goal. Just maintain a good, healthy body fat level where you feel good, but you're lean. Try and strike a good balance. All right, folks, I'm going to call it there. Take it easy. Speak soon.